Hot on the heels from the Class 55 and Class 37 models, Accurascale are making their debut in steam locomotives with the Manor class, or 7800 or 78XX. This is an amazing model, and it bodes well for the J67, 68 and 69 buck jumpers that have been announced as forthcoming. I am certainly really looking forward to their arrival. Oh, hello there. It's great to see you and I hope you are well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you up here to Weir Yard. And today we're taking a look at the debut steam outline model from a manufacturer that, whilst one of the newer in the market, has certainly established itself as one of the market leaders. I am of course talking about the Accurascale Manor, and when these arrived, well, people were ready to mind their manners, but they certainly did seem to go down a storm. The second batch has come through and Accurascale have very kindly sent over one of these for us to take a good close look at, and we do have an affiliate link down below which takes you to the Accurascale website where quite a few of these are still available, but you can also check your local model shops too, and we always advocate supporting your local model shop. But without further ado, let's take a good close look at this and see whether their debut model in steam lives up to that Class 55 Deltic that really did blow the market away with its huge amounts of thrash, but luckily not the big choky diesel fumes that the real Deltics were well noted for. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model OO gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
But first, could we ask a huge favour? Please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, ring that bell to stop YouTube from hiding the video content that you want to see from you. You can also check us out over on Patreon, and we've got a number of different tiers of rewards to help you to support the channel to keep making the videos that you want to see. We've also got our fully stocked merch store down below, just underneath the video, where you can find your Billy's Replacement t-shirts, Gronk It Up, and all the others as well, and you can be resplendent in your rather stylish hoodie, t-shirt, and drinking from your brilliant little mug, and it's a great way to show your love for the channel. But without further ado, let's get on and take a look at the debut steam outline model from Accurascale. These were the final 460 design from Collett and were intended to replace the earlier 43XX Moguls and some even earlier 440 wheel arrangement locomotives as a true made-of-all-work on the GWR system. An initial order for 20 was placed, with these being delivered in 1938 and 39, and a follow-on order for a further 20 was in plan, but the Second World War intervened and these were never built. All 20 locomotives passed into British Rail ownership in 1948, and they actually placed an order for a further 10 members of the class, and these were duly built and put to work. It might be considered to be quite an odd choice for a debut steam locomotive, but it's one that we're going to delve into and see whether Accurascale has lived up to the legacy set by the truly stunning Class 55s and Class 37s. The example that Accurascale have very kindly sent over for review is number 7810 Draycott Manor, and this is in the rather attractive BR lined green. Catalogue number ACC 2500-7810. The example that they have sent is also DCC sound fitted, and this gives us the opportunity to put this to the test as well. The box is of typical sturdy construction with a line art drawing of the locomotive on the front. Some of the first items that you'll find when you get the lid off is this very attractive GWR 2-cylinder 78XX Manor locomotive manual, which, like we saw on the Class 55, is being printed up to look like a period piece. And this includes not just a potted history of the class, but also a great deal of information about the history, including period correct photographs, and also some really quite interesting livery information, including the alphabet that was used for the nameplates of the locomotives. Also included is this little information sheet, which gives you the exploded diagram of all the parts that go into these. And like I always say, this really is truly exquisite, the number of different detailed parts that go into making up this locomotive. There's also some information on where the additional detailed parts that are in the enclosed bag will fit to your locomotive, and some information about changing up some of the parts on the cylinders depending on whether you want this locomotive to be able to go around tight curves or if you want it to look prototypically correct. The final piece of the paperwork puzzle is the DCC sound sheet, giving all of the different functions and some information on programming these if you want to change the volume. It's a very heavy piece of card, double-sided, and has all of the information that you need to do with the sound installation. As we can see, the sound installation comes from Lock Sound and is a Next 18 form factor. The overall look of the model when we take it out of the box is captured really well. And one of the first things that struck me is that we've got this matte finish smoke box. And this is something that I've not really seen before on model locomotives. But when you look at the real thing, they don't look clean and shiny. And one of the first things to change colour is the smoke box. And I do think that this matte finish certainly improves the look of the model. If we look at the top of the funnel, you can also see that the copper chimney cap has been darkened, and this is a great feature which even on a completely clean locomotive, that would very quickly become sooted, and is a great starting point for anybody wanting to do a light or heavy weathering on this model, and certainly out of the box, even pristine clean, this does still look very authentic. This effect is also carried over to the safety valve bonnet, where it's slightly discoloured on the top, again capturing the look of a real locomotive that has been in steam, where the heat and the steam would very quickly change the colour and temperament of some of the metal. Sticking with the front of the locomotive, one of the things that really does strike me is the amount of rivet detail that you can see along the running plate. This is correctly curved at the front with that characteristic sort of skateboard park slope, and the rivet detail and the demarcation between the plates that it is made of is correctly carried over. As we look along the edge of this model, we can also see some of the joggling in the running board, and this carries over right to the back of the model with the rivet detail capturing the look of the prototype absolutely perfectly. You can also see at this angle that we've got all of the correct detail underneath, and the model comes with factory fitted etched brass Draycott Manor plates. The lining is really quite crisp and is exactly where it needs to be. I do like the light shine on the lining, which really does make it stand out. On this particular example, there are a few blemishes on the top of the boiler. This feels like it is a die-cast metal part, as is the running plate, and this does contribute to a lot of heavy weight for adhesion for this model. But that said, we do have these tiny little blemishes which remind me somewhat of looking at my Hornby 00 models, which the die-cast process did seem prone to producing these little marks. That said, I think it gives the model a little bit of character, and it's not really a great detraction for me. Looking to the front, one of the areas which this matte smoke box does have an issue with is that the glue stands out as a very glossy finish, seen there on the steam pipes from the cylinder to the exhaust up the funnel in the smoke box. This is carried over with some of the smaller parts, and again, there's a little bit of a shine where there's a slight excess amount of glue. Looking to the other side, you can see as well, some of the detail parts aren't quite pushed all the way home, but what you're seeing is quite a cruel magnification, so again, it's not as big a problem as it might seem on your very large screen that you're watching this. Looking at the front face of the locomotive, this is definitely an area that Accurascale have captured really well. From the number plate 7810, with its really crisp printing, we've also got the BR era shed code plate on there as well. And this die-cast metal really does give a great finish. I always say that painted metal looks far more like painted metal than plastic painted to look like metal could ever do. The vacuum standard is factory fitted, and the front buffers with these really quite nice turned brass heads are sprung, and it's quite a pleasing resistance. Accurascale have got this just right. Looking to the front bogie of the locomotive, this is an area I really do like. It's the first time that I've seen a front bogie completely modelled true to the prototype, without any of the compromise to be able to fit a front coupling. If you're wondering about front coupling, there is one in the additional detail bag, and the whole front of the bogie comes away and reveals the NEM style pocket, which does allow you to fit a front coupling should you choose. But I love the way that Accurascale have not compromised in any way. Looking down the side of the locomotive, the joggling over the cylinders of that running plate is perfectly captured. We've also got the very characteristic crosshead and slide of this locomotive. This is an all-metal construction, and that should allow for some pretty robust longevity. Looking further back, I really do like the depth of detail and the riveting detail all the way along. And looking further in, you can see the chassis also includes an amount of detail. We've got the gussets underneath, the wheels correctly go up into the splashers, and I really like the profile of all of these wheels, which are blackened straight from the factory. Brake rigging is factory fitted. And turning the model over, we can see that the front bogie is centrally sprung, which does always give a really good ride through point work. One area though where this does seem a bit chunky is the structure of the front bogie, but this is not normally seen, so again, I'm just splitting hairs just a little bit. Turning the model round, this side is correctly detailed with the reversing linkage, and I really do like the way that this looks like it honestly could be adjusted. There's a number of separate pieces in there, and it captures this look really well. Looking underneath as well, we've got this slightly different depth to the running plate, and this mimics the real Manor class locomotives perfectly. Again, all metal construction, and we can see those wheel weights as well, which are correctly profiled. Each of the wheel sets has the correct riveting detail, and the centre one differs as per the prototype. At this angle we can also see the really crisp lining, especially over the splashers. The locomotive and tender are held together with this sprung-loaded metal drawbar. It has two different settings, one for very close and one that's slightly more generous to allow you to get around some slightly tighter curves. As you can see, there is a spring-loaded mechanism to help the tender and locomotive self-centre, but just slide apart a little bit on curves, just to give it that little bit of something extra. The cab steps are correctly modelled, and again, really robust, etched metal, and correctly finished in this slightly satin black. Looking into the cab, we've got a plethora of detail. One thing I really do like is the glazing. It's not obtrusive, but it is flush. We've also got all that backhead detail, including gauges, the correct water gauge with its chevron on the back, separately applied regulator, and we've even got the crew seats, seen in the down position on the right next to the reverser, and in the stowed position on the left. We also have a posable full plate. Dropping that down, you can see where the Firebox flicker is. And it's not obvious that they're LEDs. It's really nicely done, so it doesn't detract from the whole look of this cab. The full plate sits perfectly, and even has the cutout to avoid it from trying to chop off the brake standard. It's one of the few locomotives that I've seen where the full plate actually does what it was meant to do and bridges the full gap at all times. It's really well done. Tipping the model up and looking at the Firebox, this is another area that Accurascale have got absolutely perfect. It's got the correct slightly lozenge shape, and they haven't allowed themselves to be compromised by fitting in of the motor. We've also got the whistles with their shroud, and this is, again, all metal parts. The only area where perhaps the paint seems a little bit on the thick side is close to these plugs at the top of the boiler, but again, it's not really a big deal. There's more metal parts where we come to the cab roof, and the rivet detail is again the correct pattern that you would expect with this locomotive. The tender captures the look of the tender of this class absolutely perfectly. Again, we've got the satin black finish along the bottom with some really nice prominent spring detail, axle boxes, brake rigging and water scoop all fitted as standard. It's here too that we can see that we've got extra tender pickups, which when combined with the pickups on the main drive wheels should ensure that this is a super reliable performer. The wiring going across between tender and locomotive is of a semi-permanently coupled variety. We've got a black finished plug and black wiring, which again just shows the level of thought that's gone into this, so it doesn't show out and scream electrical wires between the two. Hidden by the fall plate, you're not really going to notice that, but it allows the DCC decoder, which is of the Next 18 variety, to be hidden away in the tender, along with plenty of room for the sound installation. Looking at the top, as it comes out of the box, we have no coal load in here, and it really shows off all of that detail on the chute. The finish is really quite perfectly done. I really do like this satin black. It looks like painted metal. We also have the correct joggle and flare out at the top of the tender, and that rivet detail is perfectly done. Again, printing is crisp and sharp, and the Lion British Railways emblem is, as always, really well done. The back of the locomotive again features that vacuum standard factory fitted. We've also got some lamp irons, again these are metal parts, handrails, metal parts, and a really crisply printed works plate too. You can see how well all of those complex curves have been captured. The red too is again that perfect rendition of this, almost like a signal red on the buffer beam. And again, sprung-loaded buffers with that really nice, firm but fair sprung-loaded mechanism. The coupling is factory fitted as a slimline tension lock, which in a NEM pocket means you can swap this out for anything that you choose. In the box with the model is included this packet of extra detailing parts. And as you can see, one of the most prominent parts is the coal load. I do actually quite like the idea of this being put into the extra detail parts, because sometimes these can be a bit of a nuisance to remove from models, to be able to model it with perhaps a real coal load, or even just to admire the coal chute in the tender. The rendition of the coal though is a little bit blocky, and I could well recommend a dusting of real crushed coal over the top to improve this look. It slides down into the chute and has a nice firm but not too tight mechanism, so we don't get any gaps around the coal. The rest of the detail parts are available here, and if you're wondering where to place these, we do have that cheat sheet included in the paperwork. Some of these are for the front of the cylinders. As delivered, you'll find that the front of these have a cutout, and some of these extra detail parts allow you to replace that with the full cylinder front, but be aware that that will impinge the front bogie from having quite as much travel, and should only be fitted thus if you are either putting this model on display or have very generous curves. My favourite items in the extra detail pack are these head codes. Printed onto etched brass, these are incredibly well detailed, and in this particular model include the Pembroke Coast Express and a Cambrian Coast Express one too. These just fit to the front of the smoke box, and with a little dab of PVA, just make sure that they won't come free and at the same time not damage your model. The locomotive includes a factory-fitted Stay Alive, which works natively with the ESU lock sound decoder that the sound-fitted examples come with, but you might want to just check if there's any CV settings that you need to undertake with the brand of your choice that you might be fitting in the decoder socket. There's also the Firebox flicker, which functions with the ESU sound decoder on F8. This is quite a pleasing glow, and with the sound activated, this coincides with the coal shoveling sounds. On the tracks, this Manor was a faultless performer, and I put some of that down to that factory-fitted Stay Alive, which really does enable some slow-speed crawling performance, even on dirty or poorly laid track, and it really takes any of the frustration of running your locomotive away. It performed really quite well over the undulations and the point work of Weir Yard, taking on its test train with zero hint of slipping whatsoever, even on the gradients. All in all, it was a faultless performer, and certainly it was a pleasure to watch it going round, with the factory-fitted ESU lock sound set up out of the box to give you perfect speed responses from this locomotive. The tracking of the front bogie through point work too was really nice, and there was no sign of anything that was hanging out further than it should. The fall plate between the tender and the locomotive covers that gap at all times, and again, the black painted wires and connector mean that the wiring between the two is as unobtrusive as it's possible to be. All in all, this was a faultless performer and a joy to watch running around the rails of Weir Yard. When it comes to the sound functionality, this can be turned on using F1. F2 features a braking function, which again is coupled with the appropriate sound. F3, F4 and F7 are different whistles. F8 features coal shoveling, and this is linked in with the Firebox flicker. If the sound is turned on, the Firebox flicker will still turn on and off on F8, but without the appropriate sounds. Other spot functions can be found between F1 and F19, and F20 controls the overall volume. F5 and F6 control heavy train mode and light train mode, and these change the sound functions to match up with whether the locomotive is being taxed or perhaps running light engine. So we look now to the scores. First up is build quality, and this was pretty good. There's a lot of detail on this, and the only areas where I could really fault was the fit on just some of the detail parts around the smoke box, and I suspect this is exacerbated by the matte finish, which makes them just a little bit more obvious that the detail wasn't quite fitting right. There was also a small detail part I found in the bottom of the box, and it wasn't clear whether this was a part that should have been on the model or whether it's something that's fallen in at the factory. All in all though, it was a pretty good build, and I'm going to give this a 9.8. Next up is running quality, and again this really could not be faulted at all. On the track, it took everything in its stride, and I particularly liked the fall plate between the locomotive and tender because that made sure that you didn't have any weird gaps appearing as it was running round, and certainly improved the look of this model. The way the front bogie tracked through the point work as well was second to none, and all in all it was pleasing to watch, helped of course by that stay alive which would ensure that there was no stuttering on any of the point work, even with the sound running. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. On DCC fitting and innovation, well, innovation this has in leaps and bounds, and it isn't necessarily obvious out of the box, but there's so much subtle stuff that's gone into this that it really leaves you thinking that there's been a lot of thought and research to making this the best possible manner that there can be. I really like the die-cast parts. They make a feel of a quality product, and this reminds me of the good old days of Hornby 00 where die-cast came as standard. It gives a really great look to the paint finish, and one of the things I really like is the detail on the running plate and all of the additional detail that is visible throughout the model. All in all, again, there is nothing to fault here, and even if you want to DCC fit it yourself, there are detailed instructions in with the paperwork, and I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. On accuracy and quality of finish, again, the accuracy on this really is good. There's so many subtle areas where they could have got things ever so slightly wrong, but they haven't. And I did look long and hard. It's actually quite difficult to find photographs of a Manor class viewed from above, just to check out some of the detail that is visible on this model. And when I did finally find those photographs, everything checked out. This really is a great, accurate model. The quality of finish too is really, really good, though there were a few items specifically around the smoke box where glue was showing, and it was the only area where I could poke even the tiniest of faults at. Again, underneath the cab, where the handrails glue in, there was just a little bit of excess glue, but with regular running you're not going to notice that. So all in all, I'm going to give this a 9.8. On value for money, again, this is an area where Accurascale always score really highly. I'm finding the model at $169.99 for the DCC Ready and $259.99 for the DCC Sound, and that's actually quite a favourable uplift for the sound fitted version, and certainly that does give you a lot of extra value, and it's a really great sound recording. In this day and age, that's on the low side for a tender locomotive, especially including the features that this comes with as standard, and I'm going to give this a 9.8, and that gives us an overall score of a very, very good 49.4. As a debut from Accurascale, this is an amazing model, and it bodes well for the J67, 68 and 69 buck jumpers that have been announced as forthcoming. I am certainly really looking forward to their arrival. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and don't forget that we've got an affiliate link down below which takes you to the Accurascale website where the models are still available from the second batch, and as we always say, do support your local model shop as well. If they've still got any of these in stock, then it's worth going and having a hunt and supporting them as well, because remember, when they're gone, they're gone. Use them or lose them. We always advocate supporting your local model railway emporium. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Just what do you think about the Accurascale Manor? Did it live up to your expectations? Is this a model maybe you've got one on your layout? And I'd love to know what your real world thoughts are of running and using these models. Or maybe it's one that has really tickled your fancy, and maybe you're already even now clicking away on that link down in the description box. I'd love to hear from you, and don't don't forget to take great care of yourself and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And of course, you can head on over to Patreon and help support the channel to keep making the videos that you want to see, with a number of different tiers of rewards to suit everybody out there. It's a great way to keep us bringing out the content that you want to see. But until next time, this is me, Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model 00 gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world, with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com, and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/JenniferKirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.